Hello again, witches, seekers, and friends, and welcome to the Fat Feminist Witch podcast, the show where we do a little ranting, raving, and wand waving. I'm your host, Paige Vanderbeck, and together we're going to explore magic and spirituality, social justice, the psychic realm, and truly modern witchcraft. Hello, my lovely, wonderful, magical witches, seekers, and yes, friends. And thank you for joining me today for what I have decided will be the last episode of the Fat Feminist Witch podcast. This is it. Episode 99. The end. You know, I was kind of mad at myself that it was going to be episode 99 and not episode 100. It was like, goddamn, Paige, just get to 100. And I couldn't. I just could not. I could not, get a filler episode out. I'm not into filler episodes. But of course, I decided to kind of think about it witch-wise and think about numerology. And episode 99, this is a better ending number. Episode 100 would add up to number 1, which is a new beginning, whereas 99 will come to the end. So the number 9 in numerology is all about endings and completion and finishing what you started, but also celebration. I started the podcast in 2015 after leaving a job at a witchy store, which changed my life, and made it clear to me that talking to people about witchcraft and magic was what I was meant to be doing, just not in the way that I had been. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not good at selling things to people. I didn't know if anyone would listen to it, let alone like it, and I've been shocked and grateful every single day that you guys, you love it. You loved it. So if you've been listening to the show for a long time, you might have noticed that I have released all of 4 episodes this year, 2 in February, 1 in July, and 1 in November that was actually supposed to come out in October. So I have been struggling all year with this and with this decision, even though I knew it had to be done. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to let go. I still don't want to let go. But I know it will be a while before I can get back to working full time. Especially because I've never made a whole bunch of money doing this in general. But that was okay, because I didn't need much money to cover my bills and needed even less to feel happy and fulfilled with this job and with my life in general. The satisfaction and the encouragement and the friendship, the camaraderie that I got out of doing the podcast and writing the books and everything was really the most valuable thing in the world to me. And that will always be true. That's still true. But I no longer have a safety net of savings to carry me through what I need to do now, which is to get back onto that healing path that I started walking a few years ago, one that I shared with all of you here on the podcast. Like most people, the pandemic really took a toll on me, lockdowns and etc. And then for sort of unrelated reasons that kind of happened at the same time, the past year has just been really, really rough. It's clear to me that although I had made a lot of progress with the treatment and the counseling and the changes and stuff that I made in my life, I still have quite a way left to go. And I can't concentrate on anything else. I've really tried. I've really tried to do both. I tried to dive into work in a way that could help me with this. But I think I've just gone as far as I can on my own. And it's time to find some more help from people who just know a lot more than I do. And that I can, and more than I can learn through self-help books and Wikipedia. I'm not a therapist. And that's actually kind of a common theme here. I feel like I've exhausted my own knowledge of mental health and therapy and stuff, but I feel a similar way about witchcraft and magic. The world's changed a lot. I've changed a lot. The internet has changed so much. Oh my God. And amidst all of it, I feel like my fountain of knowledge is kind of tapped. I'm always going to continue to learn. That's what I do. I'm obsessed with it. But it took me years and years to get where I am, and I can't really match that with like 2 weeks of research time in between episodes. I don't want to put out episodes of the show or write books that have half the information that I feel is necessary and, desired and interesting on any given topic. And I was actually put in that exact position this year. I have released 4 books, but I have actually written 5. Earlier this year, I wrote a book about using the tarot in magical practice. That was, and I am not exaggerating here, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not being an asshole, it's absolute garbage. And I got lucky. I just got lucky that it isn't being released because I have no control over that. Another thing that's changed is my publisher. They've changed a lot. Their business has changed a lot, and the kinds of books that they wanted me to write has changed. I knew before I accepted the book, I knew mentally I wasn't in the best place to write it. Not even on a topic I love and know a lot about. I also knew I was literally moving 2 days before I was due to start writing, and that was not a good idea. But I let my anxiety about money cloud my judgment. I don't know how to explain this to people, though you are some of the only people who might not laugh at me out loud when I say this, but in my entire life, money has never been an effective motivator for me. While I think it's like a beautiful and idealistic personality trait, it also has some pretty real consequences. You know, we don't live in a world where not giving a shit about money is like a good thing, or an easy thing, I should say. But if I remember that money isn't a good motivator, and I continue to allow my creativity and my desire to understand and to learn new things and to help people and connect with others, if I remember that that is the stuff that matters, I usually make enough to get by and even thrive a little bit. It also allows me to make good work as far as I'm concerned. But when I forget that and I let my financial fears take over, I'm almost never successful. And that is a part of what happened. There's a lot of other shit that's real crazy. But that's really, that was a lesson for me. You know, I was like, oh no, I did it again. And I can't help it. No one can. You know, you get afraid about money and stability, and that is a totally human thing. So I agreed to write a book that I knew I didn't have the mental or even spiritual bandwidth to handle. And then I allowed editors to talk me into writing a certain way that is absolutely wrong for me. I've always gotten super personal with you guys. My books are personal. The show is like basically my autobiography. It's the user manual to my brain at times. And I cannot believe I agreed when an editor said, hey, let's take you out of the equation here and just, you know, stop including so many personal stories and details. You know, write, you know, just for the reader and not about you at all. That's not how I roll. I never should have agreed. I don't know why I did. That book had zero personality. It was soulless drivel. And then they just kept cutting it and cutting it and cutting it. And I know I'm a wordy bitch. Oh man, I just go on and on. With all of my books, I have had to negotiate a higher than allowed word count and even had to change the layout and the format of like all of these books because I could not use fewer words. All the books are longer than they were supposed to be. And I had editors that let me have some creative control in terms of changing chapters and topics and rearranging. But this time, that was not the case. They were really set on these word counts. They were really set on it being a pretty small book. And I just could not fit enough information into these limits. And I mean, it doesn't matter how wordy you are. 50 words to describe all of the magical symbolism of each individual tarot card is a preposterous limit to give anyone. But me especially. In the end, I really hated the book, and I begged them not to release it. I was ashamed and I was embarrassed, and every day I felt this heavier and heavier sense of dread. Less than a month before the book was due to be released, I got word that a bunch of shit had gone down on their end at the publishers, and a whole bunch of titles were no longer going out, including this one that I had written. And I had been having a real spiritual, a crisis of faith, trying to decide if I believed in magic or not, you know what I mean? But I fucking believe magic is real, because if it wasn't, a bunch of you would have a copy of that god-awful book with my name on it in your hands right now, and I would just burst into flames from the embarrassment. God, I'm so dramatic, but it really felt like the worst possible thing that could happen. You know, it's awful. It's just so bad. I want to write more books about magic and witchcraft. I even would love to do a book about tarot, like a book that's a lot like that, but not that book. That one wasn't mine. It wasn't me. It had nothing to do with me. From the very beginning, it was clear to me that I had made the wrong decision, and now I need to make the right decision. I took that job because I have problems that desperately need solutions. They can't be put off anymore. They're old problems that I've been trying to deal with in tiny increments, for decades. And it's just time to really commit to finding a way to keep these problems from putting me back into this position. And this, I didn't just do this with work. I made a similar decision with my living situation. It's also just not working out and is not conducive to this work and to creativity and to podcasting or writing or anything, really. And I've been in this position before, or some version of it, and I'm tired. I'm really, really tired of it. And it's always, it's a rock bottom situation. I get here over time, and sometimes I see it coming, but it's usually too late to do anything by that point. So I think if I can get solutions for some of these problems, if I can fix some of this stuff, if I can learn to live with some of this stuff, if I can find new ways to carry some of this stuff around or to let it go, I know that I'll find my way back to writing and to speaking about witchcraft and magic. I'm going to get real emotional. I'm so sorry. I know I will, because I can't imagine doing anything else. I started looking at part-time jobs, and it sounded so absolutely absurd to think that I was just going to go back to standing behind a counter and pushing buttons on a cash register or cleaning hotel rooms. I was like, what? There's nothing wrong with those jobs, obviously. Those are what I did. But I'm a best-selling author. Growing up, I wanted to be a radio DJ and I wanted to write books, and I made a podcast and I write books. How do you go backwards? I don't know if I can. I'm probably going to have to, but never long term, because this is it. This is who I am. I actually wondered a little bit if I was mistaken in believing that I had found my life's purpose in this, but I don't think I was wrong. I don't think I was wrong. And if you hear snoring, it's my cat who's right next to me and it won't leave my side because I've been upset and crying. So you're not going to get a lot of editing in this final episode because it's my least favorite part of the process. So enjoy the cat. He really does snore that bad. I think the world just changed in a way that I couldn't anticipate, and I didn't have the tools to really cope with those changes or to go with the flow. I no longer feel like my work is doing what I set out to do, and what that tells me is that I need to find a new way to do it, and one day I'm sure that I will. I have not really lived a very happy life in general, but these last 7 years showed me that I could, that it was possible, that I could find a way to be happy, that I deserve to be happy, that I could make other people happy, and more importantly is help them make themselves and others happy. So thank you to all of you who have listened and commented and shared and reviewed and bought books and showed up to live meetups and joined my Patreon and, even the ones who sent me angry emails. Thank you. I have come to see myself as a person with something to offer the world. Someone who belongs here and who has a reason to live. And to be completely frank, I didn't really have that before. So it's a big deal. I hope you realize how special and important you all have been to me and will continue to be for the rest of my life. It's not like I'm going to forget all this happened, right? A lot of you often tell me that I helped you bring magic to your life, and I hope you know that you did the same for me just by showing up. I mean, how amazing is it that we all found each other and we're able to affect each other's lives in this way? It's wild. I live in a small city in Canada, that I often describe as the place where dreams go to die. And yet I was able to connect with all of you and bring mine to life. There's nothing more important, more magical than being able to make a connection with people. And for the past 7 years, we were all fat feminist witches coming together to make the world a magical place. And I'm honored and proud to have been a part of that. And I hope you are too. But this wasn't a totally serious bummer of a show. Okay, so this is a show where we had some fun, so let's do that. I want to talk about some of my favorite moments and say thanks. Unsurprisingly, pretty much every single year, my favorite episodes were the Halloween themed ones. Not only was it just kind of a time to let loose, have some fun, it allowed me to honor the thing that made me interested in magic and witchcraft in the first place, which is stories, mythology, folklore, books, the magic that's woven into our history and in our holidays and our fun, entertaining times. The first time I did it, I talked about stuff like Eye of Newt and Elizabeth Montgomery's Nose Twitch and Bewitched and Flying Ointments. And I had a really fun pop culture vibe with it. In the most recent one, I got to talk a bit about my favorite North American folklore story, which is the blues man who sells his soul to the devil at the crossroads to become the greatest musician of all time. I love myself some Robert Johnson. The episode where I talked about Victorian seances and mediumship is still one of my favorites, like overall, not just out of the Halloween. And I think it's because a lot of that was really super new to me. That is not a time period in history that I have ever found, particularly interesting. So it was new. And I didn't know what was real and what wasn't. That was a vibe and a time period that I know mainly from fictional movies and TV. That's pretty much it. But in researching that episode, not only did I learn a whole bunch of really cool history, I actually learned that there are 2 towns in the US that are founded and populated by psychics and mediums. There's 2. So there's Lilydale in New York and Cassadaga, Florida, both of which are now super high up on my travel bucket list. My bucket list through, North America is massive, which is funny because I've lived here my whole life. But yeah, those 2 are really high up there. The Halloween episode I am most proud of and was most excited to share, though, was last year's with Lilith Dorsey about zombies, both in movies and film, and in Haitian Vodou, which is where the entire concept originated. I mean, how fucking cool was that? I was so excited about that episode, and I love episodes where I do a bunch of research. I use them as an excuse to buy a whole bunch of really cool books. And with that episode's no different. I read like 3 different Zora Neale Hurston books, all fabulous. I read The Serpent and the Rainbow, which was a really interesting fucking wild book. And I just learned something that is like bizarrely unknown. Zombies are so popular. And in preparing for the episode, I also talked to a bunch of my friends who love horror movies and love zombies specifically. And none of them knew anything about the whole voodoo side of zombies. They have no idea where it all came from. So that one was really exciting for me. And I know from feedback that people who are not interested in actual witchcraft, who don't practice it themselves, ended up listening to the episode just because they love zombies. And they all learned something really, really cool. So that is, that's the shit. That's my... That is how I roll. That is what I want. That is so good. That episode really accomplished something very special for me. And I got to have my favorite person on the show, which is Lilith. Lilith Dorsey is a guest that I had on the show a bunch of times. And every time was mind-blowing and it was awesome. She's my favorite person to have on the show. And she's one of my favorite people just in the world in general. I just think she is the coolest person. I recommend her books to everyone. I have all of the ones that I could personally track down. I use them constantly. They're my most used reference books. They're starting to fall apart. They're not even that old. when it comes to African traditional religions, she's the first person I recommend looking to, especially if you are completely outside of the community like I am. I am a white girl. I'm sure that's kind of obvious, not even just from photos, but from who I am. But I'm completely outside of the community of any sort of African traditional religion. But it's something I've always wanted to learn because I want to learn about pretty much every religion. She made it possible for me to learn about them, the religions, the traditions, the history of it, but gave me really clear boundaries so I could do it respectfully. And every opportunity I had to share her expertise with all of you was like such a treat for me. She's also a very musical person, which is one of the reasons we get along so well. And the episodes of the show where I got to talk about music are so special to me because music will forever be my first and my truest love. Like even more than witchcraft. I was just born a musical loving person. And I don't mean like Broadway musicals. I mean music in general, just all of it. Likewise, having Fiona Horn, who is another musical witch and a literal rock star from the 1990s on this show, remains one of the highlights of my entire life. Like I'll be bragging about it until the day I die. Put it on my tombstone. Interviewed Fiona Horn twice. I'm just so excited about it still. But honestly, I looked through the list of who I've had on the show, and I don't think that there is a single guest that I had on that didn't change me in my practice in a really profound way. They were all amazing. The first person to ever be a guest on the show was Lazara Firefox Allen to talk about their book, Jailbreaking the Goddess, which I still get emails about telling me that it completely changed your life. Amazing. That book was the first I ever found that opened up what it means to be a goddess and a woman for witches of all different backgrounds and genders and places in life. It was the first one I ever found like that. I think it really set off a chain reaction among, modern witch books that we're still seeing the positive, ripples from that book being released. And that interview means a lot to me as it was the first on the show. And also because I don't know if I would have ever gotten that interview if it wasn't for Lazara specifically. I was complimenting the book on their social media and they offered to come on the show, which was awesome because I was terrified to ask. Oh my God, I wanted to ask so bad, but I didn't know how. I'd never done that before. And in general, I have a hard time asking people for things, And that bit of kindness and enthusiasm allowed me to have lots of different guests on here that I loved and that I think made the show really special. I loved having guests on. Sarah Potter, the art witch, came on here and blew my damn mind. She was so great. She said something like everyone should have a nude portrait of themselves in their room. And that got stuck in my head. And I painted one and it hangs above my bed right now. It's right here and I love it. I had to snap a photo for reference, which was funny. And then I turned myself into the star goddess, complete with glittery stretch marks and the starry background. And it makes me feel great about myself every day. And everyone who sees it asks about it. Just awesome. I have had the pleasure of hosting multiple different glamour type witches. Deborah Castellano, Gabriella Herstick, and Michael Herkis, all of whom are living, breathing works of art. Michael and Gabriella specifically, their Instagrams and everything. I mean, I just, I look at their photos and I have actual stars in my eyes. They're amazing. They're amazing. Corey Hutchison from New World Witchery. That's one of the first podcasts I ever listened to. He came on the show and he invited me onto his show, and he is just such a cool and fascinating person. He's amazing to talk to. I could talk to him and listen to him talk for just days and days and days. Stories and folklore, like I said, are the thing that got me interested in all of this in the first place. And New World Witchery really keeps that feeling alive of magic being all around us. You know, the world is getting more modern every day, and sometimes it feels like the modern world is anti-magic, but I think New World Witchery reminds us that that is just not the case. Kathleen Borealis, the one who works with literal volcanoes, I am still learning incredible new things about the earth every single day because of her and because of this fire that she lit inside me. I know more about crystals and rocks and magic and weather and climate and everything because of her. That is one of the coolest episodes ever. I was so excited. When I went back and listened to it, I can hear all these like long pauses, and it's because I was like bouncing in my seat, processing something she had said that was so fucking cool. I felt like a little kid in school, right? I'm trying not to have too many of these, but one actual regret that I will carry with me is actually because of a guest that I never had on the show, but whom I love and cherish as a real and true friend, and whose books I find endlessly inspiring, and that is Lisa Marie Basile. Lisa, I hate that I never had you on. I feel like I constantly had all these ideas like, oh, I've got to have Lisa on here to talk about this. And it never happened. It's almost like it always felt so weird that you hadn't been on here that I was sure it had to have already happened. I'm going to be bummed out about that for a long time because Lisa's amazing. Lisa, you're the coolest. You're so great. And I feel like we worked together all the time, even though we weren't on each other's podcasts or anything. Light Magic for Dark Times by Lisa. When I got it and I flipped to the back and I looked at, resources for readers to find more about witchcraft, and I saw my podcast listed, I literally screamed out loud. That was a moment that I had where I was like, oh my God, I've totally made it. Like I felt so honored, so honored. God, that was such a great moment. I'm so grateful for the friends I made and the people I met doing this show. I mean, I can't imagine my life without them now. Lilith and I talk music, and we talk about Miss Cleo on Facebook all the time. Gabriella is my sexiest friend of all time. Probably will be forever. Mary Grace Farron, who wrote Italian folk magic. My God, I had never felt a part of my family and my Italian heritage. In like in a really real way until I found her and her book and her community of other magical Italians. That book feels like a family Bible to me. Like if I was having kids, that's something that I would pass down. When I feel sad, or especially when I feel very lonely, I read it and I feel warm and I feel comforted and I laugh. I laugh about all the little words and terms that I had never heard outside of conversations with my own dad, right? Same with Honoring Your Ancestors by Mallory Vaudoise. I feel like I was able to create a relationship with my Noni, who passed away when I was a very young girl. That has been just completely, just so important to me. When I'm going through dark times, I look for the light magic in Lisa's book, not even just flipping to the back to see my podcast. I mean the whole book. Joanna DeVoe is another music lover. We connect over music a lot, and she still makes me smile all the time. Her positivity feels like the sun. It's sunshine. It's never fake or forced, and I'm grateful to her for that because she is an antidote to a lot of the toxic positivity out there without being a total bummer. She's not the opposite. She's just doing it in her own way. Creatively, I'm constantly being inspired by Laura Tempest Zakroff, who I also didn't get to have on the show, but whose books I recommend constantly and always use for research. I think I have recommended her books in every single book I've written because I use them so much for research. And I know there's a lot more of you, and I wish I could just keep going, but what I really mean to say is thank you so much for sharing your magic with me and with everyone on the podcast. And my life is just significantly better because of all of you. In general, the work I was able to do here and the things I was able to learn because of the witches I met and the books I got to read, it allowed me to live an extremely creative life. I say life, but it's 7 years filled with enthusiasm and excitement. I've always been a creative and even artistic person, and while that was something that people really loved when I was very young, the older I got, the less appreciated I felt because of it. There were always small little things, but when it came to stuff like work and home life and friendship, my wacky creativity and my desire to just learn everything kind of seemed to hinder more than help. It made people feel like I was not a grown-up. In jobs, my creativity was only ever appreciated in like really tiny ways that didn't shake anything up. But you guys, you guests, listeners, everyone, you guys let me shake up whatever I wanted to. And you got right down into all of the fine details of things with me. I really needed that. And I really needed to know that doing that could help other people and put something good out into the world. Also, you not only let me go on these tangents, but you encouraged it. God, that is like the number one thing that should have tipped people off to my ADHD way sooner in life. I get really, really super interested in something, and I need to let it consume my life for a little while. And you all never complained. The year I got into astrology, you guys tuned in droves. Eliza Einhorn's episode about Saturn still gets tons of listens every month, one of the most misunderstood planets out there. And tons of you are learning more about it and coming to appreciate it, I'm sure, because of her and her episodes she did with me. The episodes I did about baneful bitchcraft, aka cursing and hexing, remain some of my most popular of all time. Which is great, because that's something we couldn't talk about in most of my life as a witch. You guys never really crawled up my ass about stuff like that. You let me be angry when I needed to be angry. I literally had a whole episode about anger, actually, and you guys loved it. My episode about fat phobia and how hard it is to be fat is still popular, and in general, I could go on forever about how much your fat positive support changed my life. Being able to call myself the Fat Feminist Witch, being able to say that out loud, being able to tell other people that, whipping out a business card with that on it, unbelievably validating. God, that's so helpful. Even those of you who are literally thin, I've seen you've been fighting more for fat people and for fat positivity over the last 7 years. I'm watching you. I see you on social media. It's incredible. It's meaningful. It's literally changing the world for the better, for me and for other people like me every single day. And the idea that I might have had a small part in that is, like I said, that's something I'm going to carry with me forever, no matter where I end up. I'm really glad I did this, because I have been obsessing over all the little things that I didn't do, the things I didn't say, the books I didn't write, the plans that I had that never came to fruition, and it has been really, really hard. I feel a lot of guilt, like I let myself down, like I let some of you down. But remembering everything that we've accomplished together is really lifting me up. Don't get me wrong, I'm devastated. I'm really bummed out, but I think this is the right way to go for now. I thought about, doing some sort of hiatus situation, but I just think, I think the Fat Feminist Witch, I think it was an incredible time I think it was an incredible block of time. I often talk about the Fat Feminist Witch. I talk about her like she's a person, like she's a character, like she's someone else. Someone who lived inside of me, and that I never really felt safe letting out. She's someone that I always wanted to be. She's someone I still want to be, you know? Sometimes I don't feel like, I feel like we're different people. Or like I'm not as tough as she is. I'm not as strong as she is. I'm hoping that's not true. But, I know that if I had not had this chance to be that person, to be me, to be myself, let's be real. My whole life I've really wanted to just be myself and for that to be okay. And over these last 7 years, I have found that it is possible to do that, and that other people not only appreciate it, which is really nice, but that it serves a purpose and that it helps people. I know I wasn't always able to respond when you would say these beautiful things or send me emails or comments about, you know, how some episode of the podcast changed your life or your practice, how it made you feel comfortable with your body or your skin or your mental health. I didn't always know what to say. But I always read it. And I always took that in, and it it's like the Grinch, you know, when his heart grows and it breaks that little thing. That's how I felt, you know. I feel like I lived for a very long time with a heart that was broken. And thanks to you and, you know, everything that I've done over these last years, and everyone who's helped me, you know, all the individuals, even the publishers who sent me books, you know, everything. I feel like you've repaired something very precious that was very broken. And I'm not all the way there yet, you know, but I know that if I hadn't done any of this and I hadn't connected with all of you, I would be much further away. So before I start sobbing, everything is going to stay online. These episodes are going to stay up. In fact, I've been organizing some of them into playlists that I will share. The website is going to stay up. You can find all of this content whenever you like. I'm going to keep using Twitter because I suck and I'm addicted to it. But everything will just kind of stop getting updated. I don't want to disappear completely. Though with the podcast and everything out there, I guess technically I can't. Thank you all so much for everything. For all of the comments and the shares and the conversations that we've been having. You know I'm talking into a microphone, but I really feel like we have been having a conversation for 7 years, and it's one that has been enlightening and entertaining and really validating and life affirming for me. So thank you. Thank you so much for having that conversation with me. And I hope we all have a really fabulous year. You know, 2020 has been going on forever now. So much so that 2023 is on its way and 2020 doesn't feel like it's over yet. But I hope this next year things really change for the better. Things continue to get better if you guys are having a good time. Some people are having a good time, whatever. I just hope we all have a really fabulous year. I hope you have a happy new year. And yeah, I hope to see many of you again when I come out the other end of all of this. You know, one day I'm gonna write witch books and stuff again, and I hope our paths will cross again.